The art of war, ancient wisdom for modern life. Every generation faces its own wars. For some, those wars were fought with swords and shields on fields of mud and blood. For us, the battlefield has changed, but the stakes remain just as high. Our wars are fought with ideas that can build or bankrupt empires, with deadlines that demand our absolute focus, and with the invisible, crushing weight of competition that follows us into our homes and haunts our screens. Each morning, we rise to fight these battles, not against opposing armies brandishing steel, but against the more insidious enemies within, our own doubt, the endless siege of distraction, and the universal adversary of delay. We fight for market share, for career advancement, for personal peace, for a better future. And yet, through all the noise and complexity of the modern world, the fundamental rules of victory have never changed. 2,500 years ago, during a time of feuding kingdoms in ancient China, a general named Sun Tzu wrote 13 chapters that would define the very essence of strategy. His words, etched onto fragile bamboo strips, have outlasted empires. They have shaped the minds of emperors, guided the hands of revolutionaries, and today, they echo with startling relevance. In the halls of boardrooms and the strategy sessions of startups, and on the digital battlefields where our modern lives unfold, this is because the art of war is not truly a book about destruction. It is a timeless manual on direction. It teaches the art of knowing yourself with unflinching honesty, of reading your environment with profound clarity, and of acting with precision and purpose when everyone else is lost in chaos. This book has survived millennia because it reveals something eternal about the human condition. The ultimate power is not winning through brute strength, but achieving victory through superior wisdom. It is the power to win by not fighting, to conquer by understanding, and to lead by example. In this audiobook, we will journey together through each of Sun Tzu's 13 timeless teachings, not as warriors preparing for physical combat, but as thinkers, leaders, and creators, learning the art of calm, precise, and intelligent victory in our own lives. Chapter 1: Laying Plans, the Strategic Foundations. Sun Tzu opens his masterwork not with a call to arms, but with a call to thought. His first teaching is on laying plans, the unseen foundation of all triumph, and it begins with a powerful declaration: all warfare is based on deception. This single statement sets the stage for everything that follows. Every great victory, whether in business, politics, or personal achievement, begins long before the first move is ever made. Success is not a matter of luck or aggression, but of deep and meticulous calculation. Sun Tzu reminds us with chilling certainty, those who calculate deeply before the battle will succeed. Those who act on impulse, driven by ego or emotion, are already defeated. To make these essential calculations, Sun Tzu identifies 5 constant factors that determine the outcome of any conflict. These are the pillars of modern strategy. First is the moral law. This is the unifying purpose that causes the people to be in complete accord with their ruler, so that they will follow him regardless of their lives, undismayed by any danger. In the modern world, this is your company's mission, your team's why. When a team is united by a shared purpose, they don't just work for a paycheck, they strive for a collective vision. Without this moral alignment, an organization is just a collection of individuals pulling in different directions. Second is heaven. It signifies night and day, cold and heat, times and seasons. It represents the uncontrollable forces of timing and rhythm. Today, heaven is market timing. It's understanding economic cycles, seasonal trends, and shifts in public opinion. Launching a brilliant product in the wrong market climate is like planting a seed in winter. Wisdom is knowing not just what to do, but precisely when to do it. Third is earth. This comprises distances, great and small, danger and security, open ground and narrow passes, the chances of life and death. For us, earth is the competitive landscape. Who are your competitors? What are their strengths and weaknesses? What is the terrain of your industry? Is it open and accessible, or is it a narrow pass guarded by established giants? A successful strategy is always grounded in the reality of its environment. Fourth is the commander. This represents the virtues of leadership: wisdom, sincerity, benevolence, courage, and strictness. A leader without wisdom makes flawed plans. A leader without sincerity cannot earn trust. A leader without courage will hesitate at the critical moment. And a leader without discipline cannot command respect or turn a vision into reality. These qualities are as crucial in a CEO as they were in a general 2,000 years ago. And fifth, method and discipline. This is the structure that brings a plan to life, the marshalling of the army in its proper subdivisions, the gradations of rank among the officers, the maintenance of roads by which supplies may reach the army, and the control of military expenditure. In modern terms, this is your business model. It's your operational processes, your supply chain, your budget, and your organizational chart. A brilliant vision, without a disciplined system to execute it, is merely a daydream. To illustrate the absolute importance of discipline. Sun Tzu once advised a king to test his teachings using the royal concubines. He divided them into two groups and appointed the king's two favorites as their captains. He explained a simple drill, but the women just giggled and ignored his commands. Sun Tzu calmly addressed them. If instructions are not clear, it is the fault of the general. He repeated the command. Again they laughed. Sun Tzu then declared, if the general's orders are clear, and the soldiers still disobey, the fault lies with their leaders. He ordered the two captains, the king's favorites, to be executed. The king protested, but Sun Tzu held firm. After the execution, the remaining women followed every order with silent, terrified precision. It was a brutal, unforgettable lesson. Clarity and discipline are the bedrock of any successful operation. Emotion and status are irrelevant in the face of the mission. In today's world, entrepreneurs and leaders face this same truth every day. A business that acts without a clear, calculated plan burns through cash and morale. A leader who changes direction on a whim weakens their own army, creating confusion where there should be conviction. Whether you are planning a marketing launch or a military march, the result is decided by the quality of your preparation. Success is silent. It is born in quiet rooms, on whiteboards, and in the focused mind of a leader who measures everything before taking the first step. By the time the world sees your victory, it should be an afterthought, a conclusion that was already decided in your mind long ago. The key takeaway from this first chapter is this: plan deeply, act precisely, win quietly. You have just taken the first step on a journey through one of the most powerful strategic texts ever written. The principles in laying plans are the foundation for everything that follows. Here at Wealth Waves, our mission is to explore this ancient wisdom and make it a practical tool for your modern life. If you are ready to master the next 12 teachings, from managing conflict and harnessing momentum to the art of winning without fighting, then please, take a moment to subscribe to our channel. By subscribing, you won't miss a single chapter, and you will be supporting our mission to bring more timeless knowledge to a world that needs it. Thank you for listening. Let's continue our journey together. After laying the foundation of victory and meticulous planning, Sun Tzu brings us crashing back to reality with a stark and vital warning. This is Chapter 2, Waging War, a lesson on the true cost of conflict. He begins with a statement that every leader, from ancient kings to modern CEOs, should carve into their memory. There is no instance of a nation benefiting from prolonged warfare. This chapter is not about the glory of battle. It's about the brutal mathematics of it. Sun Tzu, the master strategist, reveals himself here to also be a master of efficiency. He teaches that every action, every campaign, every project has a hidden price tag, one that is paid not just in gold, but in time, in energy, in morale, and in spirit. To ignore this cost is to court disaster, even in the face of apparent victory. He paints a grim picture of a campaign that drags on. When a war is prolonged, the state's resources are drained, the treasury empties, weapons grow dull, soldiers on the front lines, or your employees in a grueling, endless project grow weary. Their enthusiasm fades, replaced by exhaustion. Their sharp edge of motivation is ground down into a dull ache of endurance. Sun Tzu is unequivocal. A victory that takes too long is not a victory at all. It is a failure disguised as success, a banquet where the cost of the meal exceeds the nourishment it provides. In ancient China, a ruler once ignored this timeless wisdom. Obsessed with conquering a neighboring state, he sent army after army year after year. The initial patriotic fervor faded. The kingdom's treasury was emptied to pay for supplies and soldiers. The people at home began to starve, as farms were neglected. The soldiers fought not for glory but for mere survival on a forgotten front. When the news of final victory finally came, there was no one left to celebrate. The kingdom itself had collapsed from within, its foundations eaten away by the very war it had won. This ancient story plays out every day in the modern world. You can see it in the startup that spends years chasing perfection, endlessly tweaking its product in a quest for the flawless launch. It burns through its funding, and more importantly, it burns out its passionate team. By the time the perfect product is ready, the market has moved on, and the spirit that fueled its creation is gone. You can also see this in large corporations that engage in pointless wars of attrition, fighting over a few decimal points of market share while a more nimble competitor changes the entire game. And we see it in our own lives. How many people fight prolonged, silent battles with indecision? They remain in toxic jobs or draining relationships, losing peace and energy day by day, long before the war ever ends. Sun Tzu understood a fundamental law of the universe. Time and energy are your most precious currencies. Use them wisely. His principle is not about avoiding conflict, but about valuing efficiency and decisiveness. Consider the strategy of Amazon in its early years under Jeff Bezos. To an outsider, it may have looked like a prolonged war. The company lost money for years, but it was not an endless, chaotic struggle. Each financial loss was a calculated investment to achieve a decisive, lasting advantage in a specific arena. First books, then music, then everything else. Every expansion had a clear timeline and a precise end goal. Bezos was not wasting resources. He was using them to win the right battles quickly and conclusively, to build an unshakable position. The goal is not to fight many battles. The goal is to win the one that matters, and to win it with such speed and clarity that your strength is preserved for the next challenge. The key takeaway from this chapter is a crucial check on our ambition. Don't waste energy in drawn-out wars. Strike only when the cost of waiting exceeds the cost of action. True strategy is not measured in the battles you fight, but in the resources, time, and spirit you save. Chapter 3. Attack by Stratagem. If Chapter 1 teaches us to plan, and Chapter 2 teaches us to conserve, Chapter 3 elevates us to the highest and most refined level of mastery. This is the heart of Sun Tzu's philosophy, a principle that has captivated leaders for centuries. It is the art of the attack by stratagem, and it begins with his most famous and profound teaching. The supreme art of war is to subdue the enemy without fighting. This is the ultimate goal of the master strategist. It is the transition from a mindset of physical confrontation to one of intellectual and psychological dominance. The finest victory is one where no sword is drawn, no resources are destroyed, and no blood is shed, because true lasting strength is demonstrated through influence, not destruction. The greatest general is not the one who wins 1,000 battles, but the one who makes battle unnecessary. To achieve this, Sun Tzu outlines a clear hierarchy of strategy, a ladder of excellence that every leader should understand. At the very top, the highest and most supreme form of victory is to attack the enemy's strategy itself. This means disrupting their plans, foiling their ambitions, and making their entire approach irrelevant before the conflict can even begin. In the modern world, this is the art of radical innovation. Apple didn't try to outmarket Nokia or BlackBerry. It launched the iPhone, a device that fundamentally changed the definition of a mobile phone. By creating the App Store ecosystem, Apple attacked the very strategy of its competitors, rendering their business models obsolete. They won, without ever engaging in a feature-for-feature fight. They changed the battlefield entirely. The next best strategy, according to Sun Tzu, is to break the enemy's alliances. If you cannot neutralize their plan, then isolate them. In business, this could mean forming an exclusive partnership with a key supplier, cutting off your competitors' access to critical components. It's about dismantling their support structure, sowing discord among their partners, and ensuring that when you do face them, they stand alone. Only after these higher strategies have been considered does Sun Tzu recommend the third level, attacking the enemy's army. This is what most people mistakenly think of as strategy direct, head-to-head competition, price wars, aggressive advertising campaigns, talent poaching. This is a costly, draining, and often brutal approach. While sometimes necessary, it is a lower form of victory because it guarantees mutual damage. The winner often emerges nearly as wounded as the loser. At the very bottom of the ladder, the lowest and most foolish form of strategy is to besiege walled cities. This is a slow, grinding, and resource-intensive battle of attrition with no guarantee of success. In modern terms, this is trying to compete with a deeply entrenched market leader head-on in their strongest area. It is a futile effort to outmuscle an opponent in their fortress, and it almost always ends in failure. One of Sun Tzu's disciples, King Hilu, masterfully applied this very principle. Instead of launching a costly invasion of rival states, he used his spies to spread false intelligence and sow seeds of mistrust among his enemies. He made them believe their allies were plotting against them. As the rival kingdoms exhausted themselves in mutual suspicion and internal conflict, their alliances crumbled. King Hilu then simply absorbed them into his own domain, conquering his rivals without raising a single blade. He won by making his enemies defeat themselves. This is the essence of strategic thinking, Sun Tzu wrote. To fight and conquer in all your battles is not supreme excellence. Supreme excellence consists in breaking the enemy's resistance without fighting. When you know yourself and you know your opponent, you can choose the form of battle, or you can choose that no battle is needed at all. Every problem in life can be attacked directly, or it can be dissolved intelligently. The manager who understands their team's motivations, it's the investor who senses the mood of the market, it's the friend who diffuses a tense argument before it begins, are practicing the art of war at its highest level. The key takeaway from this chapter is a timeless truth. Force may win battles, but strategy wins peace. The greatest power you can ever wield is the power to achieve your goals without conflict, to win without ever fighting at all. In our journey through Sun Tzu's wisdom, we have learned to plan meticulously and to act with decisive efficiency. Now in Chapter 4. Tactical dispositions, we arrive at a principle that is both profound and counterintuitive to the aggressive mindset. It is the art of securing victory before the battle has even begun. Sun Tzu states it with powerful clarity. The skillful fighter puts himself into a position which makes defeat impossible. Let that idea settle. The first step to victory is not offense. It is not the attack. It is defense. It is about the position you hold. A wise commander, a skilled leader, or a successful individual first makes themselves unassailable. They secure their foundation so completely that failure becomes an impossibility. Only then, from this platform of absolute security, do they wait for the opportune moment to strike a vulnerable enemy. Victory, therefore, is a two-step process. First, ensure that you cannot lose. Second, wait for the enemy to present you with the opportunity to win. Sun Tzu teaches that the master strategist does not rely on the chance that the enemy will not attack. They rely on the fact that they have made their own position invincible. This is a fundamental shift from hoping your opponent is weak to guaranteeing that you are strong. To stand firm and ready is strength. To wait for the perfect opening is wisdom. Centuries ago, the brilliant General Sun Bin, a descendant of Sun Tzu's own school, found himself facing an enemy army twice the size of his own. A lesser general would have met force with force or retreated in fear. Sun Bin did neither. Instead, he hid his true strength. To deceive his opponent, he ordered his soldiers to light fewer and fewer cooking fires each night. The opposing general, observing the dwindling fires from a distance, was tricked into believing that Sun Bin's army was rapidly deserting out of fear, growing arrogant and careless. The enemy general abandoned his main force and advanced too quickly with only his elite troops. This was the mistake Sun Bin was waiting for. From a perfectly prepared ambush on high ground, Sun Bin struck and completely destroyed the overconfident commander. His victory was a masterclass in the triad of quiet triumph, preparation, patience, and position. In the modern corporate battlefield, the same rule applies. Consider a company like Google. In its formative years, it didn't just build a search engine, built invisible, unbreachable moats, created a vast data infrastructure, assembled brilliant research teams, and fostered a global ecosystem of products that all fed back into its core strength. Long before competitors even understood the new terrain, Google's position was unshakable. They had made themselves unassailable. This principle is deeply personal. To win in your career, you don't always need to be advancing aggressively. Sometimes the greatest progress is made in silence, the late nights spent mastering a new skill. The discipline of saving and investing, the effort to build a strong network. You are building an advantage that no one can see. You are making your personal and professional position unbreakable, so that when an opportunity or a crisis arrives, you are the one who is prepared to act with strength and confidence. The key takeaway of this chapter is a powerful strategy for long-term success. Build your strength before you show it. Victory is not found in striking the first blow, but in being utterly unbreakable when you are struck. The use of energy? Stu is not talking about mere force or effort, but about something far more profound: momentum. The Chinese concept is shi, which can be understood as the potential energy stored in a strategic position, waiting to be released. He begins by explaining that organization is the key to wielding it. The control of a large force is the same principle as the control of a few men. It is merely a question of dividing their numbers. This chapter teaches that the true power of an army or an organization lies not in its size, but in its unified momentum. 1,000 soldiers moving without rhythm are weaker than 100 who move as one. Imagine a single massive boulder perched at the top of a mountain. It possesses immense potential energy. It takes only a small, focused effort to start it rolling, but once it begins to move, its momentum becomes an unstoppable force of nature. This is shi. A masterful leader does not waste energy trying to push the boulder uphill. They focus all their effort on that initial, decisive nudge that unleashes its full potential. Sun Tzu compares this strategic energy to water. Water is the ultimate master of momentum. It does not crash head-on against a mountain. It adapts to the ground, flowing around obstacles, finding the smallest cracks and weaknesses. Its power accumulates as it moves, eventually becoming strong enough to wear down the hardest stone. A wise leader channels the energy of their team in the same way, ever forcing it against immovable objects, but guiding it toward the path of least resistance, where it can build into an overwhelming current. The great strategist Zhuge Liang was a master of this principle. In one campaign, he ordered his troops to beat their drums loudly, but at irregular and unpredictable intervals. The enemy, hearing the chaotic and shifting rhythms from across the valley, became confused and terrified. They believed that multiple divisions were approaching from all sides at once. The psychological energy of fear and uncertainty had already broken the opposition's spirit long before Zhuge's true army finally launched its focused, unified attack. He won not with force, but with the intelligent application of energy. Today, this same force of momentum rules entire industries. A startup that builds and celebrates small, daily progress soon becomes an unstoppable force as its energy compounds. Think of Elon Musk's SpaceX. Each successful rocket launch, and especially each successful landing, was more than a technical achievement. It was a burst of energy that fueled confidence within the team, attracted massive investment, and boosted public morale. What began as a series of isolated, difficult efforts now carries the unstoppable momentum of an entire industry shifting in its direction. But momentum without focus is just chaos. Sun Tzu reminds us that energy is not about constant, frantic motion, it is about direction. A river flows endlessly toward the sea, but only because it knows its path. In your own life or business, this means that your small, daily actions must be aligned with a clear and unwavering purpose. Without that direction, your energy will be scattered and wasted. With it, every small effort builds upon the last, creating a powerful current that will carry you through any obstacle. The key takeaway from this chapter is a lesson in dynamics. Master energy by mastering rhythm. Small, consistent actions, when aligned with a singular purpose, create an unstoppable and overwhelming momentum. We have built an unassailable position and learned to harness the power of momentum. Now Sun Tzu teaches us where to direct that force with surgical precision, weak points, and strong. This is the secret art of the intelligent strike, a lesson in transforming insight into advantage. It begins with a command that is the very essence of guerrilla warfare and market disruption. Attack him where he is unprepared. appear where you are not expected. The master strategist understands that victory is rarely achieved through a head-on collision of strength against strength. That is the path of brute force, a costly and inefficient method that exhausts both victor and vanquished. The true art lies in a deeper perception, the ability to identify an opponent's vulnerabilities while masking your own. Every opponent, no matter how powerful, has blind spots and hidden weaknesses. Strength is never absolute. A mighty mountain range appears invincible, but over centuries, the patient force of erosion finds its cracks and wears it down to dust. So it is in all human affairs. A giant corporation, a dominant army, even a proud and confident individual, hides unseen vulnerabilities in their strategy, their logistics, their psychology, or simply in their assumptions. The wise strategist studies these patiently, silently, and then moves with decisive force when the opportunity opens. History offers no greater example of this than the Carthaginian general Hannibal Barca. When he set out to invade Rome, he faced the most powerful empire in the world. The Romans, confident in their legions and their secure borders, prepared to defend the predictable coastal routes. Their strength created a weakness, a failure of imagination. They never believed an army could cross the treacherous snow-covered Alps. And so, that is precisely what Hannibal did. He attacked Rome not from its fortified front door, but from its undefended blind side through ice, snow, and stone. That single, audacious decision to strike at an unimagined weak point turned the world's strongest empire into a frightened observer of pure genius. In our time, market disruption follows the exact same logic. While established brands guard their traditional strongholds, new entrants attack the overlooked spaces. Blockbuster's strength was its thousands of retail stores. Netflix didn't compete by building more stores. It attacked the weak points, late fees, and inconvenience by invading the living room through the mailbox and the internet. The legacy automaker's strength was their vast dealership network. Tesla didn't fight for dealership approval. It attacked the weak point and outdated customer experience by rewriting the rules of car buying entirely. This is a profound lesson for any personal or professional challenge. Insight transforms imbalance into advantage. When you observe your situation carefully, even your own perceived weakness can become a weapon. You may not have the most resources, but perhaps you are faster and more adaptable. In a negotiation, don't argue against your opponent's most rigid point. Find the area they care less about, the concession that costs them little but means a great deal to you. Don't fight strength with strength. The key takeaway of this chapter is the ultimate secret of the underdog and the innovator. Find the opening that others ignore. The weakness hidden by pride or assumption, and the battle is already yours. We have learned to see the battlefield with the eyes of a strategist, identifying points of weakness and strength. This is the art of converting strategic position into tactical advantage. It is here that Sun Tzu gives his most poetic and powerful command on the nature of action. Move swift as the wind, stay as silent as the forest, attack as fierce as fire, and be immovable as the mountain. Maneuvering is the crucial link between the plan and the engagement. It is a delicate and dangerous dance between speed and stability, between decisive action and patient preparation. Sun Tzu warns that nothing is more difficult than the art of the maneuver. To rush into a situation unprepared, driven by haste, is to drain your strength and march toward failure. Yet, to hesitate when the moment of opportunity arrives is to let victory slip through your fingers. True maneuvering is not chaos. It is controlled, precise motion, guided by the clarity of your strategic plan. The 4 elements from Sun Tzu's command are not just poetry, they're a complete framework for action. Swift as the wind is the ability to seize a fleeting opportunity with speed and decisiveness. Silent as the forest is the discipline of preparing your moves without alerting your competition, building your strength in quiet confidence. Fierce as fire is the application of overwhelming concentrated energy at the decisive point of attack. And immovable as the mountain is the unwavering resolve to hold your ground and defend your position once it has been secured. A great leader knows which of these energies to embody at any given moment. The ancient general Han Xin was a master of this art. While facing the powerful Chu army, he executed a brilliant maneuver. He feigned a disorderly retreat across a river, appearing vulnerable and panicked. The enemy, seeing an easy victory, pursued recklessly, plunging into the river in a chaotic charge. This was the trap. As the Shu army was caught, disorganized, and exposed in the water, Han Xin's hidden forces struck from behind, trapping them between the river and the spear. It was not speed alone that won him the day. It was the perfect rhythm of the maneuver, the precision of the trap, and the courage to act at the exact right moment. In modern business, maneuvering means adapting quickly without losing your core structure. Startups, by their very nature, must thrive on this art to survive. No example is clearer than Netflix. For years, it was a DVD B-mail service, silently building its customer base and logistics. But as technology evolved, its leaders saw the opportunity for streaming. They maneuvered at the perfect time, pivoting their entire business model with the swiftness of the wind. While larger competitors like Blockbuster remained immovable as mountains, rooted in their outdated strategy and destined to crumble. This is a lesson for us all. Motion without direction is simply wasted energy. Direction without the courage to move is stagnation. The challenge is to balance them. In your career, in your projects, in your life, you must learn to read the terrain and know when to prepare in silence and when to move with decisive speed. When you master this balance, you become unstoppable. The key takeaway of this chapter is a vital principle of execution. Speed alone does not win. Controlled movement and perfect timing, guided by a clear strategy, create a momentum that cannot be matched. We have learned to plan, to position, to build momentum, and to maneuver with precision. But what happens when the battlefield changes in an instant? What happens when the enemy does the unexpected? In Chapter 8, Variation in Tactics, Sun Tzu gives us the answer. A principle essential for survival in a chaotic world, in the midst of chaos, there is also opportunity. This chapter is about the supreme wisdom of flexibility. Sun Tzu teaches that change is the only constant in war and in life. Therefore, a leader must be fluid like water that flows around rocks, finding new paths instead of fighting immovable obstacles. A rigid plan, no matter how brilliant, is a fragile thing. It can be shattered by a single, unexpected event. The commander who uses only one method of attack will inevitably be defeated by a leader who can adapt. When the circumstances on the ground change, so must the plan. The master strategist understands that a plan is a guide, not a gospel. There are some roads that must not be followed, some armies that must not be attacked, and some cities that must not be besieged, regardless of the original orders. True genius lies not in adhering to a flawless plan, but in knowing precisely when to abandon it. During the Han Dynasty, the great general Wei Qing was famous for his adaptability. His enemies learned to fear not his strength, but his unpredictability. He was renowned for never using the same marching route twice. His foes, anticipating his movements, prepared elaborate traps on his usual path. He would suddenly shift direction, his army flowing like a river into a new channel, attacking from an angle they least expected. His enemies could not counter a plan they could never predict. For Wei Qing, flexibility was his fortress. The modern world moves faster than ever, and it relentlessly rewards those who can adapt faster than it changes. Consider the journey of Netflix. It began as a DVD rental service, a brilliant adaptation to the age of the internet. But its leaders did not cling to that model. They pivoted to streaming, leaving their rigid competitor Blockbuster behind. Then, as the streaming market became crowded, they pivoted again, transforming from a content distributor into a major content creator, producing their own original shows and movies. At each stage, they adapted their tactics to the changing terrain. We saw this again during the global pandemic, while many organizations froze, paralyzed by the sudden shift. A company like Zoom adjusted instantly, scaling its infrastructure to meet an explosion in demand. The rigid organizations fell behind because their plans could not bend. This is a profound lesson in resilience. To adapt is not to abandon your principles or your ultimate goal. It is to update your methods without losing your purpose. The person with a rigid life plan is often broken by the unexpected. The adaptable person sees a setback not as a dead end, but as a detour, an unforeseen opportunity to discover a new and perhaps better path. The key takeaway from this chapter is the ultimate defense against uncertainty. Flexibility is the true armor of wisdom. Adapt your tactics to match the moment, and no crisis can ever truly defeat you. Having learned the art of adaptation, we now arrive at the source from which all adaptation flows: awareness. Welcome to Chapter 9, The Army on the March. This is the practice of reading the world around you with the eyes of a master strategist. Sun Tzu teaches that a wise leader must learn to see what others ignore, for the environment is always speaking to those who know how to listen. He begins with a simple but profound instruction: observe the ground and the sky, for they reveal what words cannot. Victory, Sun Tzu explains, depends on reading the terrain, the morale of your people, and the fleeting nature of the moment. This chapter is a field guide to observation. Sun Tzu gives his commanders practical advice. A mountain offers an advantage for defense, while a river presents the risk of entrapment. He teaches them to read the signs, the shape of dust clouds revealing the type of approaching army, the sudden flight of birds indicating an ambush. But his teaching goes deeper than the physical landscape. He reminds us that the terrain of the human heart is as important as the earth itself. A great leader must learn to read the emotional environment of their team, their customers, and their competitors. Are they confident or fearful? Is their morale high or breaking? This awareness of the human element is a form of intelligence that transforms a good leader into a brilliant one. In the legendary Battle of Red Cliffs, General Zhou Yu faced an enemy fleet 10 times larger than his own. A direct assault would have been suicide. Instead of just looking at the enemy, Zhou Yu observed the environment. He used the wind and the river to achieve his victory. He knew his plan to use fire ships would only work if the conditions were perfect. So he waited, patiently observing until a strong east wind began to blow, the perfect catalyst to carry his fire ships directly into the heart of the enemy's vast, unsuspecting fleet. Nature itself became his most powerful ally, all because he knew how to listen to it. In modern times, leaders who read the terrain of their markets are the ones who succeed. When Toyota first entered the American market, they did not try to outmuscle Detroit with bigger engines or flashier designs. Instead, they studied local driving habits, the impact of rising gas prices, and a growing consumer desire for trust and dependability. While their competitors relied on loud advertising, Toyota quietly built a reputation for reliability. It won not through force, but through a deep and patient understanding of the American consumer. Awareness is the ultimate form of intelligence. Before you speak in a meeting, read the mood in the air. Before you make a decision, read the ground beneath your feet. This practice of deep observation is your greatest defense. It allows you to see the trap before you are caught and to seize the opportunity that everyone else has missed. The key takeaway from this chapter is a guide to developing true foresight. Wisdom is seeing what others miss. Those who observe deeply never walk into traps. In our last chapter, we learned to read the subtle, shifting signs of the environment. Now, in Chapter 10, Terrain, Sun Tzu teaches us how to strategize according to the fixed physical nature of the ground itself. Every struggle, he explains, is shaped by its environment. A wise leader does not make a single move without first deeply understanding the ground on which they stand. This chapter is a masterclass in strategic geography. Beginning with the principle, he who knows the terrain and the weather will be victorious. The terrain is not a passive backdrop. It is an active participant in every conflict. It dictates what is possible and what is foolish. To ignore it is to fight against reality itself. Sun Tzu classifies 6 fundamental kinds of terrain: accessible, tangling, temporizing, narrow passes, steep heights, and great distances from the enemy. Each of these demands a completely unique strategic response. A great general, therefore, never fights the same battle twice, because the ground is never exactly the same. These ancient classifications are deeply relevant today. Accessible terrain is an open market with low barriers to entry. Entangling one is a complex industry where it's easy to get stuck. A narrow pass is a niche market where a small, focused player can defend against a giant. And steep heights represent the powerful advantages held by an entrenched market leader. A brilliant plan for one terrain will lead to disaster on another. The ancient general Wu Qi was a master of using terrain to his advantage. His armies were trained to be proficient across deserts and mountains alike. When a powerful enemy force hid themselves in a series of narrow valleys, Wu Qi refused to attack. He knew that to do so would be to fight on his enemy's chosen ground. Instead, he used a small force to lure them out onto the vast open plains, a terrain that perfectly suited his superior cavalry. He didn't change his army to fit the ground. He changed the ground to fit his army. In our time, the terrain is the marketplace, the industry, and the mind of the consumer. A company that deeply understands this environment, from customer behavior to the competitive landscape, is the one that wins. Toyota's entry into America is a perfect example of this mastery. The terrain of the 1970s American auto market was steep heights, dominated by Detroit's powerful, glamorous cars. Toyota didn't launch a frontal assault on that position. Instead, they identified a different terrain, the narrow paths of consumer trust and the open ground of fuel efficiency during an oil crisis. They studied not just the roads, but the minds and wallets of American families, and built their strategy on the terrain of dependability. They conquered quietly because they knew the ground better than their rivals. The terrain you operate on might be your career path, your financial situation, or your personal relationships. Before you make your next major move, take the time to understand the ground. Are you on solid footing or a slippery slope? Are you in an open field of opportunity or a narrow pass where you must be cautious? You must understand where you stand before you can plan where you are going. The key takeaway of this chapter is a foundational principle of all strategy. Master your ground, whether it is physical or mental before you ever engage. Victory begins not with a plan of attack, but with a deep awareness of where you stand. We have mapped the physical ground. Now, Sun Tzu takes us deeper into the most complex terrain of all, the human mind under pressure. Welcome to Chapter 11, The 9 Situations. This chapter moves beyond physical geography to explore psychological geography, teaching us that the same soldier will fight with different intensity depending on the situation he is in. It is here that we find one of the most powerful truths about human nature, captured in the simple phrase, "In the midst of difficulties, we find opportunity." Sun Tzu describes 9 distinct types of strategic battlefields, each with its own unique psychology. These range from dispersive ground when fighting in your own territory where soldiers are easily tempted to flee home, to the most extreme and transformative of all, death ground, a situation where there is no escape, and the only choice is to fight for survival. It is on this ground that Sun Tzu reveals a paradoxical secret of motivation. Necessity awakens a courage that comfort can never provide. When soldiers are surrounded with no hope of retreat, they fight with a ferocity they never knew they possessed. Comfort breeds carelessness. Pressure creates precision. The legendary General Han Xin demonstrated this with terrifying brilliance. In a crucial battle, he intentionally positioned his troops with their backs against a raging river, facing a superior enemy force ahead of them. Retreat was impossible. His own officers thought he was insane, a violation of every military rule. But Han Xin was not just a general, he was a master psychologist. He knew that by removing the option of escape, he was also removing the distraction of fear. Faced with the stark choice of victory or annihilation, the soldiers found something deeper than courage. They found a singular, unbreakable focus. Their resolve became iron, and they fought with such desperate power that they won a decisive and historic victory. Modern leaders, entrepreneurs, and creators often find themselves on their own ground of death. Think of a startup with only a few months of funding left in the bank. There is no backup plan, no second chance. That immense pressure forces a level of speed, innovation, and teamwork that is impossible to achieve in a comfortable, well-funded corporation. Perhaps no one exemplifies this more than Steve Jobs. After being publicly fired from Apple, the company he co-founded, he faced his own personal ground of death. His career could have been over, but instead of surrendering to defeat, that desperation fueled his genius. With no safety net, he created Pixar and Next, 2 revolutionary companies born from the ashes of his failure. This crucible of necessity made him stronger, and ultimately paved his way back to Apple, where he would go on to change the world. This is a profound lesson for our own lives. We often do everything we can to avoid difficult situations, to seek comfort and security. Yet it is often in our moments of greatest challenge that we discover our greatest strength. The walls that seem to be trapping you are not always traps. Sometimes they are teachers, forcing you to tap into reserves of creativity and resilience you never knew you had. The key takeaway from this chapter is a powerful paradox of the human spirit. Adversity sharpens ability. When the possibility of escape is gone, the necessity of excellence appears. From the psychological terrain of the human mind, Sun Tzu now turns our attention to the most powerful and volatile forces on the battlefield. Welcome to Chapter 12, The Attack by Fire. Fire is both a literal weapon and a profound symbol. It represents sudden, overwhelming change, viral momentum, and the untamable power of emotion. Sun Tzu teaches that a wise leader must understand how to use these environmental forces to their advantage. Beginning with the tactical advice. When fire breaks out inside an enemy's camp, respond at once. On one level, this chapter is a practical guide. Sun Tzu lists 5 ways to use fire: to burn enemy soldiers in their camp, to burn their supplies, to burn their equipment, to burn their arsenals, and to burn their morale to the ground. But the real lesson is deeper and far more timeless. You must learn to control your own flames before you dare to unleash them upon others. A leader who acts out of anger, ego, or rage is a leader who will be consumed by the very fire they seek to wield.
Fire is force.
Used wisely, it illuminates a path and clears away obstacles with incredible speed. A business with a passionate, motivated team is a team on fire. A product that captures the public's imagination spreads like wildfire. The masterful leader knows how to ignite this passion and channel this momentum. But used recklessly, fire destroys indiscriminately. A leader who makes impulsive decisions in the heat of the moment can burn down their own organization, their reputation, and their relationships. We return to the Battle of Red Cliffs, for it is the ultimate example of this principle. General Zhou Yu's victory was not just a matter of observation and timing. It was an act of unleashing a force of nature. When his fire ships, carried by the strong east wind, crashed into the enemy's vast fleet, the fire did not just burn wood. It burned the enemy's will to fight. The flames spread like destiny from ship to ship, and a mighty military force, superior in numbers, crumbled to ash in a matter of hours. Zhou, you did not just win a battle. You unleashed a conflagration that changed the course of history. In our era, this metaphorical fire is the energy of momentum and emotion. When a leader knows how to ignite passion in a team or an audience, they create an energy that can transform entire industries. Think of a figure like Elon Musk, who masterfully channels public excitement for his ventures to fuel innovation and attract immense talent. But he also serves as a cautionary tale, demonstrating the inherent dangers Sun Tzu warns of. Fire without discipline can consume its creator. Impulsive communications and actions, driven by the heat of the moment, can create chaos and risk, threatening the very empires he has built. This is a lesson in self-mastery. Your own passion is a fire. It is the fuel for your ambition and your creativity. But if you let it burn unchecked, it will lead to burnout, reckless decisions, and broken trust. The goal is to learn how to tend to your inner fire, to know when to stoke it for energy and when to bank it for patience. Let it be a lantern that illuminates your path, not a wildfire that destroys the landscape. The key takeaway from this chapter is a timeless guide for wielding power. Both internal and external, harness emotion, don't be consumed by it. Master your inner fire, and the world becomes your fuel. We have arrived at the final chapter, the one that powers all the others. Sun Tzu concludes his masterwork by revealing the heart of all strategy: information. Welcome to Chapter 13, The Use of Spies. This is the ultimate advantage, the engine of victory that is worth more than any weapon, army, or fortress. Sun Tzu, a pragmatist, living in a superstitious age, makes a revolutionary claim. Foreknowledge cannot be gotten from spirits or gods. It must be obtained from men who know the enemy's situation. Victory, he insists, is not a matter of divine will or guesswork. It is the direct result of superior intelligence. To act without information is to be blind and deaf, stumbling through a battlefield of traps. The greatest mistake in any conflict is to act in ignorance. The greatest strength is to see with perfect clarity when others are blinded by their own assumptions. Sun Tzu outlines 5 types of spies: local, inward, converted, doomed. and survive in each, a different tool for creating a complete web of knowledge. The lesson is universal. You must build a system for gathering intelligence to understand the reality of your situation. Knowledge is the ultimate advantage. In the Warring States period, the state of Kiev found itself facing a much larger and more powerful enemy. A direct confrontation would have meant certain defeat. So, they used intelligence. They sent a spy who masterfully posed as a defector, gaining the trust of the enemy commander. He then fed his new master subtle but false intelligence, convincing him that his army was overextended and needed to be divided to secure its flanks. The enemy general, believing he had a trusted advisor, did just that. The moment the army was split, Kiev attacked the weakened corps and won a decisive victory. They won the war before the first major battle ever began, all through the power of information. In our time, information is data, and the spies are the algorithms and analysts who interpret it. Companies like Google, Amazon, and Meta dominate their industries not because their products are merely good, but because they possess the world's most effective intelligence operations. They understand what people want, often before people do themselves. In finance, investors who meticulously study macroeconomic indicators and global trends are modern spies. They don't predict the future. They analyze the present with such clarity that the future becomes visible. They win through understanding. Before you make your next major decision, be it a career change, an investment, or a difficult conversation, ask yourself, have you done the work of a spy? Have you gathered the necessary intelligence? Or are you acting on assumption? To see clearly is to hold the sharpest blade. The key takeaway from this final chapter is the ultimate principle of strategy. Information is power. Truth is the sharpest blade. Those who know before others act are the ones who decide the fate of nations and dreams alike. 13 chapters, 13 timeless lessons. From the silent work of preparation to the supreme advantage of information, Sun Tzu has shown us that the path to victory is, and always has been, the path of wisdom. You don't need an army to practice these principles. You need focus. You need clarity. You need the discipline to plan like a general and act like a monk. Every choice you make, how you spend your time, how you react to failure, how you treat others, is a battle between confusion and clarity. Win those small, quiet battles within yourself, and the world will see your victories loudly. Let this ancient book remind you, true warriors don't fight for glory. They fight for growth. They fight not to destroy, but to master themselves. As you step forward into your own battles, in your business, your career, or your life, remember Sun Tzu's final, clarifying words. He will win who knows when to fight and when not to fight. Thank you for listening to The Art of War, Ancient Wisdom for Modern Life. It has been an honor to guide you through this timeless masterpiece. This production was brought to you by Wealth Waves. If this wisdom spoke to you, we invite you to become part of our community of thinkers. Help us share these powerful ideas with others who seek clarity in their own lives. Like this video, share it with a friend or colleague, and subscribe to Wealth Waves to continue our journey through ancient books that reveal the secrets of modern power. Your mind is your battlefield. Win there, and you will win everywhere.